Okay, in this video we are discuss about the concept of how the exist function work. What are all the things are required for a exist function. When it terminates, it is terminated by normal process or terminated with abnormal termination. What type of functions you are called at what type of situations or scenario is there. Then sometime it required for any waiting period are there, for that we can call the wait functions. What are the different types of wait functions are there to wait for a milliseconds or a period of time. Then we generates wait PID also for try to execute that corresponding functions execution. Then we are discuss about other concept of wait functions that are required. Finally, we move towards what is called race condition. Then how race conditions are executed with examples. And finally, we discuss about what is called exe function. Exe function nothing but execute the functions. How these things are done, that should be discussed. And then what is the changing of IDs and group IDs at time of execution of the process, that also we are discussed one by one. Here in this slide we are discussing about how exist functions are working. One is exist function when normal termination completes, then how it works. Sometimes it unavoidable situation that creates some abnormal termination exist, then how the exit function works in these two different types of the scenarios or conditions. The first one, normal terminations, returns from a main. Usually the program started from main, then returns to the main. It is one type of a normal termination after completion execution of the main method. Calling exist include calling exist handlers, nothing but you can add in between the program or coding side. You can add in this type of exist handler in between the program that supposed to completion of that function execution and terminates it. Then calling underscore exist, it is also called one type of exist function. This also terminates a normal type of the termination from the program. Then abnormal terminations, we can call abort, SIGABRT is the control signal that required to abnormal terminations. Some other way you can consider abnormal termination is when process receives certain signals. Exist status is used to notify parents how the child terminated. When parent terminates before a child is inherited by init process, nothing but initiating the process from the parents, then also it is abnormal termination, because before completion of child process parent is terminated. If child terminates before the parent, when the information about is obtained by the parent, when it execute wait and wait PID functions. The information consists of the process ID, the termination status, and amount of CPU time taken by the process. The process that has terminated but whose parents has not yet waited for it is called ZUBI. When process inherited by INIT terminates, it does not become a ZUBI. I need to execute one of the wait function to fetch the termination status. These are all some of the abnormal terminations executes. Here we discuss about wait and waitpid functions. These two functions perform the operations like a wait function, a call to wait, a blocks the calling parent until one of its child process exists or signal is received. After child process terminates, parent continued its execution after wait system call instructions. Here, the termination of child is an asynchronous event. The parent can ignore or can provide function that is called when signal occurs. Nothing but when you consider the wait function, the process is going on, the next process is supposed to wait for some time. For that we are using the wait function. The waitpid function is supposed to using after the things are properly executed, that should be done, that is okay, then it generates some process ID of the same process, right? Child process may terminate due to any of the reasons following. It can call exist function, nothing but in between that we can call the exist function that automatically terminates, because the function exist should be called only because of your in between that you want to go for quit the existing the process. Otherwise it returns an integer value to the main. That's also one of the way. If return statement is there in the program, that is the last statement of the program, the function, then that returns any integer value that's supposed to terminate. Otherwise it receives a signal, nothing but from the operating system or any other process whose default action is to be terminated. Automatically after that one, anywhere some in between that some process is stopped by the OS. Otherwise by the any process that should be run. For that reason you want to go for receive any signal, that automatically default action should be considered as it's a terminate process. The process that call wait or waitpid can block the normal things. Otherwise it returns immediately with termination status of a child, or it returns immediately with an error. Nothing but when the process should be called wait or waitpid, it blocks the normal things. Otherwise returns something that terminates the normal child process. Otherwise it shows an error at the time of running the program. In this slide that shows the prototypes of wait function and waitpid function. Wait function that contains integer type of return value. If returns the process ID, it is okay. Otherwise it returns -1, and that shows it is an error in wait function. Another, the function prototype is waitpid, that includes the parameters. That is, if returns, if it is perform, the process is okay. Otherwise returns 0 if non-blocking options are there. Otherwise it returns -1 only when the error is generated. Right. Whatever the macros provide the information about how the process is working and how the process is terminated. Here stloc argument can be done in two different ways. One is if statloc is a null pointer, then the argument can be ignored. Nothing but at time of nothing will be considered. If statloc is not null pointer, the termination status of the terminated process is stored in the location pointed by the corresponding argument. The status integer status returned by two functions given information about the exist status, the signal number, and about generation of the core file. That information should be produced by these two functions. If it is, how much that should be waited for the child process complete. Otherwise, if it is performed well, that generates waitpid information to the return to the corresponding main. Here in this slide that shows the demonstration of exist function, how it is used and how it produces exist status of the corresponding process. For that we call the function void pure exist. Within the bracket we are pass a integer value of the status. The first one, if the particular exist function is working only when it normal terminates, nothing but wait for the completion of terminations, then it calls exist function and returns the corresponding status of the exist function in the form of integer value. Otherwise, once again it checks. If it is not existed, then it checks if wait function, if the signaled is status, nothing but whatever abnormal termination is happened, then corresponding signal number is generated, nothing but that indicate what type of error that should be presented with the return type of the information based on 0 or 1 or -1. Otherwise, it checks once again the condition, whatever the information is there, the core file is generated or not. If it is generated, then it is okay. Otherwise, that's supposed to go to the check the child stopped, or you want to go for generate some other signal number about the status. Like that, we have to check for all the situations that perform any type of exist function that support execute and returns some status in the form of any integer values. Here we discuss about what are the three different status of the exist function that performs. First one is WIF EXITED, nothing but wait if exist function is performed. If it is true, if child terminates normally and it exist status is used to fetch the lower 8 bits of argument child passed to exit or underscore exist function, nothing but it's supposed to end of the normal process that indicated by the status only when it is true, and it produce whatever the integer number that should be calculated and returned back with the exist or underscore exist function. Second one, WIF SIGNALED, nothing but wait if signaled. If it is true, if child terminates abnormally, nothing but normal termination is not happened for the corresponding process. Anywhere it happens abnormal termination from the existing the process, then it's supposed to go for using WTRMSIG, nothing but return some message used to fetch the signal number and that can cause what type of the terminations. Otherwise, it is true the core file was generated. Otherwise, it generates any type of the core file generated by the corresponding process, and then it returns the corresponding status. The last one is if wait if stopped, nothing but if it is Wait, you want to go for perform. If it is stopped, nothing true for child that currently stopped, nothing but the process of child process is ends. Then it is true. If it is true, that ends of the corresponding process of child process. Otherwise, it wait for stop signal that generates, nothing but used to fetch the signal number that caused child process to stop, nothing but any problem, any issues are there, that's supposed to go for indicating that. Like that, we can use three different types of the status in the corresponding wait and wait PID process that is performed by the two functions, wait function and wait PID functions.